Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to kick off our presentation today on sacred groves. This is the first slide, so I just want to warmly welcome you all and introduce the topic. Our focus will be exploring the significance of sacred groves, their cultural and environmental importance, and what makes them special. Over the next few slides, we'll dive into their history, spiritual meaning, and conservation efforts. Let's get started. Sacred groves are essentially small patches of virgin forest that are incredibly rich in biodiversity. These areas are not just left untouched by accident. They are actively protected by local communities who have a deep cultural and religious connection to them. These beliefs, along with local taboos, play a crucial role in maintaining the sanctity and conservation of these forests. It's fascinating to realize that sacred groves are among the oldest forms of nature conservation. Indigenous communities and rural people have been practicing this form of conservation for generations. It's a perfect example of how traditional knowledge and cultural practices can help preserve nature naturally, without the need for modern intervention. As we explore the broader theme of conservation strategies, sacred groves stand out as a powerful testament to community-led conservation efforts rooted in cultural values. They remind us that respecting local traditions can be a vital part of protecting biodiversity. Now, let's look at the classification of sacred groves. First, we have the traditional sacred groves. These are special places where the village deity resides, and interestingly, the deity is often represented by a simple, elementary symbol. It's a very local and community-based form of sacred space. Next, we have the temple groves. These are created around a specific temple, and the grove is conserved and maintained as part of the temple complex. It's a way of integrating nature and spirituality, emphasizing the sacredness of the area connected to the temple. Finally, there are groves around burial or cremation grounds. These spaces are also considered sacred because of their association with life's final rites and the spiritual significance attached to death and remembrance. All these classifications highlight how different communities perceive and preserve nature in connection with their spiritual and cultural practices. They show the diverse ways in which sacred spaces are integrated into everyday life, reinforcing the overall theme of the importance of sacred groves in cultural identity and environmental conservation. Let's explore some fascinating examples of sacred groves across India. First, we have the Sacred Grove in Meghalaya, which is an important site for local spiritual practices and conservation. Moving to Manipur, the Konthaujam Lermbai Sacred Grove is another significant place where nature and tradition are closely intertwined. In Kerala, sacred groves are often linked to local communities and their ecological wisdom, playing a vital role in preserving biodiversity. Lastly, there's the sacred stone of Ebedhu Marjing in the Heingang Marjing Sacred Grove, also in Manipur, which holds cultural and religious significance. These examples highlight how sacred groves serve as spiritual, cultural, and ecological treasures, connecting communities to their natural environment and reinforcing the importance of conserving these sacred spaces. When we talk about taboos, beliefs, and practices related to sacred groves, a key concept to understand is that these groves are often seen as the dwelling places of a presiding deity. Essentially, they are considered sacred spaces where a particular divine presence is believed to reside or be worshipped. In India, these groves are commonly linked with temples, monasteries, shrines, or even burial grounds. These sites serve as focal points for religious activities and community rituals, reinforcing their spiritual significance. It's also important to note that while many of these sacred groves are associated with local Hindu gods, they are not exclusive to Hinduism. Sacred groves of Islamic and Buddhist origins are also known and respected in various regions. This diversity highlights how different religious traditions have historically recognized and preserved these sacred natural spaces. So, understanding these beliefs and practices helps us appreciate the cultural and spiritual fabric of the communities that protect and revere these groves, connecting them to the broader theme of how humans interact with nature in sacred contexts. In many sacred groves, there are strict taboos that are carefully observed. For example, entering these sacred spaces with chapels or footwear is generally prohibited. This shows a deep respect for the sanctity of the area. Additionally, activities like removing dead wood or killing animals are forbidden within these groves. People believe that such acts could upset the divine forces that protect these spaces. They feel that disturbing the natural elements or harming wildlife might provoke the wrath of the gods and goddesses worshipped here. These taboos are not just rules. They are essential to maintaining the spiritual balance and reverence for nature, which ties into the larger theme of respecting and preserving sacred natural sites. Let's talk about the deities in sacred groves. In Tamil Nadu, Ayyanar is the main deity worshipped in many of these groves. He holds a very special place in local traditions and is often seen as a protector deity. Moving over to Kerala, the focus shifts a bit. Here, the groves are mostly dedicated to Lord Ayyappa, and you'll often hear them called Ayyappan Kavu or Sastha Kavu. These groves are not just about the deity, they also serve as spiritual spaces for community gatherings and rituals. Additionally, some groves are dedicated to goddesses and are known as Amman Kavu or Bhagavathi Kavu. These goddess shrines are equally important and are often associated with fertility and protection. Interestingly, there are also sacred groves specifically meant for snakes, called Sharpakavu. These are quite unique because they are dedicated exclusively to snake deities, reflecting the deep spiritual connection local communities have with these creatures. Overall, these sacred groves highlight how diverse and integral these natural spaces are to local religious practices, connecting nature, community, and spirituality seamlessly. Let's talk about the legal status of these groves. Initially, they didn't have any protection under federal legislation in India. That meant there weren't formal laws specifically safeguarding them. However, some NGOs stepped in to help, working directly with local villagers to protect these important spaces. It's interesting to note that traditionally, even today, members of the community take turns to look after and protect these groves. This shows a strong community involvement in conservation efforts. Then, in 2002, the Wildlife Protection Amendment Act was introduced. This was a significant development because it provided legal recognition and protection to community-held lands, including these groves. So, over time, legal frameworks have evolved to support local conservation practices, which aligns with the overall theme of community-led ecological preservation. Sacred groves are scattered all over the country, and they are found in a variety of landscapes. For example, in the Thar Desert of Rajasthan, you'll find scrub forests that are maintained by the Bishnoi community. Moving to the Western Ghats of Kerala, there are lush rainforests that are also considered sacred groves. And in Himachal Pradesh in the north, similar protected areas exist. Interestingly, these sacred groves are known by different names depending on the region. In Kerala, they are called Kavu or Sharpakvu. In Tamil Nadu, people refer to them as Kavalkadu. And in Karnataka, they are called Devkhed. What's important here is that despite the regional differences in names, these sacred groves share a common purpose. They serve as vital spaces for biodiversity conservation and cultural preservation. They reflect local spiritual beliefs and community efforts to protect nature, which ties into our overall theme of how cultural practices contribute to environmental sustainability. This slide doesn't contain enough information. That's why we're moving to the next slide. Today, I want to talk about the sacred grove ecosystem. Sacred groves are fascinating because they represent a truly diverse spectrum of ecosystems. They are not just isolated patches of greenery. Instead, they embody a rich variety of environmental settings. In India, you'll find these sacred groves in many different landscapes. For example, they are often present amidst barren landscapes or grasslands, providing a vital refuge for flora and fauna in otherwise sparse environments. You'll also see them on hill slopes, where they help stabilize the soil and support mountain ecosystems. In agricultural landscapes, sacred groves serve as important biodiversity hotspots, offering a sanctuary for wildlife and maintaining ecological balance. Moreover, coastal plains often host these groves, playing a crucial role in protecting coastal ecosystems and preventing erosion. And even in the Rajasthan desert, sacred groves are present, highlighting their adaptability and cultural significance across diverse terrains. All these examples underscore how sacred groves are integral to India's ecological and cultural fabric. They connect us to the idea that conservation isn't just about protecting one type of environment, but recognizing the diversity of ecosystems that sacred groves encompass. So, here we have a grassland sacred grove. This is a fascinating example because it highlights how certain natural areas are considered sacred or spiritually significant in many cultures. These groves are often preserved and protected because of their cultural or religious importance. They serve as a sanctuary for local communities, offering a space for rituals, ceremonies, or simply a place to connect with nature. What's really interesting is how these sacred groves contribute to biodiversity conservation. Because they are protected due to their spiritual value, they often end up being some of the most pristine and diverse ecosystems in the region. This concept ties back to our overall theme of the importance of cultural practices in environmental preservation. Sacred groves like this blend spiritual reverence with ecological conservation, showing us how deeply intertwined human culture and nature truly are. A desert sacred grove. Now, this might seem like an unusual pairing at first, desert and sacred grove. But what we're really highlighting here is the contrast and connection between two seemingly opposing environments. The desert, as many of you know, is often seen as a harsh, barren landscape, dry, extreme, and challenging for life. But within this harsh environment, there are sacred groves. These are small, protected areas of lush vegetation, often considered holy or spiritually significant. They serve as refuges for life and as symbols of resilience, demonstrating how life can thrive even in the most unlikely places. This concept ties into our overall theme, resilience and the sacredness of nature, no matter the environment. It reminds us that even in the most extreme conditions, there are spaces of renewal and spiritual significance, encouraging us to see the sacred in every environment around us. Let's take a closer look at the traditional uses of sacred groves. One of the most significant roles they play is serving as repositories for various Ayurvedic medicines. These groves are like natural pharmacies, preserving medicinal plants that have been used for generations. They also act as sources of replenishable resources such as fruits and honey, which local communities rely on. Interestingly, in most sacred groves, hunting and chopping wood are considered taboo, helping to protect the biodiversity and maintain ecological balance. Another vital function is their contribution to environmental stability. The vegetation cover in these groves helps reduce soil erosion and even prevents desertification, as seen in regions like Rajasthan. Many of these groves are connected with ponds and streams, which meet the water needs of local communities. In some cases, they even assist in recharging aquifers, ensuring a sustainable water supply. Overall, these traditional uses highlight how sacred groves are integral to both ecological health and community well-being. In modern times, sacred groves have taken on an important new role as biodiversity hotspots. Many species, both plants and animals, seek refuge in these areas because of ongoing habitat destruction and hunting in surrounding regions. These groves often contain species that have become extinct elsewhere, making them vital reservoirs of genetic diversity. They act as natural sanctuaries, helping to preserve unique genetic traits that might otherwise be lost. Additionally, in urban landscapes, sacred groves serve an essential function similar to lungs for the city. They provide much-needed vegetation cover, which helps improve air quality and enhances the overall environment. So, these sacred groves are not just culturally significant, they also play a crucial role in maintaining ecological balance and supporting urban sustainability. This highlights how traditional conservation areas can adapt and serve vital functions even today. Sacred groves are truly remarkable repositories of local biodiversity. They are rich in species, hosting a wide variety of plants and animals that are often found nowhere else. The key reasons for this high species richness include the restrictions on resource usage within these groves, which helps protect the environment, and their largely undisturbed condition. Additionally, the microclimate in these areas remains quite suitable for many species to thrive, further supporting biodiversity. These groves also serve as vital refuges for rare and endemic plants and animals, making them incredibly important for conservation. For example, in the Allinagaram Sacred Grove of Theni district, we find huge Terminalia argina trees, which are quite significant both ecologically and culturally. Furthermore, sacred groves in regions like the Western Ghats are home to endemic species such as Diospyros pruriens and Humboldtia brunninus, which are unique to this region. You can also find fascinating bird species like Loughton's sunbird and the Nilgiri flycatcher thriving in these protected spaces. Overall, sacred groves play a crucial role in preserving the local biodiversity, acting as natural sanctuaries that support both common and rare species and exemplify nature's resilience when undisturbed. Let's talk about some of the crucial ecological functions and services that sacred groves and forests provide. First, conservation of biodiversity is a key role. These areas serve as important repositories of both floral and faunal diversity, and what's remarkable is that local communities have managed to conserve them sustainably over time. Often, they become the last refuge for endemic species, those unique species that are found only in a specific region. This highlights how vital these sacred groves are for preserving our natural heritage. Next, we look at the recharge of aquifers. Sacred groves are usually connected with ponds, streams, or springs, which are essential water sources for local communities. The vegetation cover in these areas helps in replenishing underground water sources, or aquifers, ensuring that water remains available for both nature and people. This natural recharge process is a vital ecological service that often goes unnoticed. Finally, there's soil conservation. The vegetation in these sacred groves and forests plays a significant role in maintaining soil stability. It helps prevent soil erosion, which can be a serious problem in many landscapes. By protecting the soil, these ecosystems help sustain agriculture and prevent land degradation. Overall, these ecological functions showcase how sacred groves are not just cultural or spiritual sites, but also vital for maintaining ecological balance and supporting local livelihoods. Today, I want to talk about some of the major threats facing our sacred groves. One of the key issues is the disappearance of traditional belief systems that are fundamental to the concept of these sacred forests. When these belief systems fade away, the cultural and spiritual protection they once offered also diminishes. Another significant threat comes from rapid urbanization and developmental projects like roads, railway tracks, and dams. These infrastructure developments often lead to the destruction of these groves, disrupting their ecological and cultural integrity. Commercial forestry activities also contribute to this loss. Encroachment is another problem we face. As human populations grow, there's increased pressure to use land for agriculture, housing, and other needs, which encroaches upon these sacred spaces. This leads to fragmentation of the forests, making them less viable and more vulnerable. A particularly interesting point is the process called Sanskritization, where primitive forms of nature worship are transformed into more formalized temple worship. While this can sometimes help in preserving certain aspects, it can also lead to the dilution or loss of the original, more authentic spiritual connection with the land. Invasion by exotic weeds is also a major concern. Species like Eupatorium odoratum, Lantana camara, and Prosopis juliflora quickly spread and outcompete native plants, disrupting the local ecosystem and threatening the biodiversity of these groves. Population pressure also plays a role, as increasing numbers demand space, fuelwood, and agricultural land. This intensifies the pressure on these forests and reduces their size and health. Finally, activities like land quarrying, deforestation, and forest fragmentation further threaten these sacred groves. These activities not only destroy the physical landscape, but also diminish the ecological and spiritual value that these groves hold. All these factors combined highlight how vulnerable our sacred groves are and underscore the urgent need for their protection and preservation. Let's take a closer look at people's attitudes and the social changes impacting sacred groves. Over time, there's been a noticeable loss of traditional religious beliefs, which historically played a key role in protecting these areas. However, there are also instances of religious conversion, leading to shifts in how these sites are perceived and maintained. Sacred groves are more than just spiritual sites. They serve as repositories of diverse species and are unique centers for conservation. Religious beliefs and taboos have traditionally helped preserve these ecosystems by restricting certain activities. But sociocultural practices, along with resource exploitation and encroachment, threaten their integrity. Increased population pressure and habitat fragmentation due to development, modernization, and urbanization further accelerate habitat degradation. Despite these challenges, sacred groves continue to provide vital resources and economic support. Recognizing their importance, conservation efforts aim to maintain ecological balance and protect biodiversity. This diagram illustrates that sacred groves are benevolent to both humans and nature. They support ecological stability and offer cultural and spiritual benefits. It's important to see how human impacts can influence these ecosystems, sometimes offering opportunities for positive conservation outcomes and sustainable coexistence. Now, let's look at some key conservation activities that are essential for protecting our environment. Conservation, at its core, involves three important activities. First, we need to strengthen the existing conservation efforts of the villagers. This means building on what they are already doing, supporting their initiatives, and helping them adopt better practices. Second, there's the restoration of degraded sacred groves. Sacred groves are often protected by local communities because of their cultural and spiritual significance. Restoring these areas not only brings back biodiversity, but also revives cultural traditions that are aligned with conservation. Third, a landscape-level approach is crucial. Instead of focusing on isolated patches, we need to see the bigger picture, looking at entire landscapes to ensure connectivity and overall ecological health. All these activities are interconnected and vital for achieving sustainable conservation. They help us preserve biodiversity while respecting local traditions and promoting community involvement, which is at the heart of our overall conservation theme. Now, let's take a look at some of the key international organizations involved in heritage and conservation efforts. First, we have the International Council on Monuments and Sites, or ICOMOS. This organization plays a crucial role in the protection and preservation of cultural heritage sites around the world. Then, there's UNESCO's Man and the Biosphere Program, or MAB, which focuses on sustainable development and the conservation of biological diversity, especially in regions where human activity and nature intersect. We also have the Mountain Institute and its Sacred Mountains Project, which highlights the cultural and spiritual significance of mountain regions, emphasizing their protection. Sacred Sites International is another important group working to preserve sites of spiritual and cultural importance globally. Moving on, the World Conservation Union, known as IUCN, is a major player in biodiversity conservation. Their projects, such as the World Commission on Protected Areas, help establish and manage protected regions. IUCN also manages the World Heritage Center, which oversees UNESCO's World Heritage Sites, those landmarks of cultural and natural importance that we all need to safeguard. Finally, we can't forget the World Wildlife Fund, now called the Worldwide Fund for Nature, or WWF. Their work is vital in protecting endangered species and natural habitats worldwide. All of these organizations, each with their unique focus, come together in a global effort to preserve our shared cultural and natural heritage, aligning perfectly with our overarching theme of conservation and sustainable stewardship. Let's reflect on what we've discussed today. As we've seen, thousands of enormous trees have been sacrificed to widen our national highways. While I understand that development is crucial for our country's progress, it's also important to recognize the cost at which it comes. These trees are not just part of the landscape, they are vital for our environment and for maintaining ecological balance. Now, the time has come for us all to take responsibility. We need to protect the sacred groves that remain and ensure they are preserved for future generations. It's about balancing development with conservation, making sure that progress doesn't come at the expense of nature's treasures. Together, we can work towards a future where growth and preservation go hand in hand. Thank you so much for your time and attention today. I really appreciate your engagement and interest in this topic. Remember, the key points we've covered highlight the importance of collaboration, innovation, and continuous improvement. These ideas are at the heart of achieving success in our field. I hope you leave this presentation feeling inspired and equipped to apply these concepts in your own work. Once again, thank you for being here and for your commitment to growth and excellence.